Welcome everyone to an exciting day of Algebra 2 where we are continuing higher order factoring, the second part. So make sure you have your notebook ready to take notes and your pencil. We ended up already going through different types of factoring. And so just to review, whenever you want to factor, you always check for your GCF first. And so one thing that you can do is use Desmos. So when you go to Desmos, you're going to do the following. You're going to go to Desmos, the graphing calculator. So I'm going to show you that right now. You go to Desmos.com, click on graphing calculator. You're going to go to the bottom left where you see like a keypad. This is from Desmos itself. And now you're going to click on functions. You're going to go to MISC, miscellaneous, and then click on GCD. And so what you would do is just type in the numbers you want to find the greatest common factor or greatest common denominator. So if I want to find between 4, 24, and 64, close it with a parenthesis, it gives you 4. So that would be your GCF. Okay, so let's go back. This is just for you to jot down and remember. Make sure, very important, that you use commas in between your numbers. Okay. The GCF can be variables or numbers. So the one that I just showed you is just if there's numbers. You also have to look at your variables. GCF must be part of the answer once you're done factoring. Okay, so you can't forget that. And then the ABC method is another one we looked at, where numbers can be in front of x. There can be a number right here or right here in terms of the x fourth. If a is not equal to 1, don't forget to put that number into your factors and take out the GCF when you can. So I can multiply a times c, whose sum is b. Okay? And if I have an x squared, I just separate it as x, or if I have x to the fourth, I do x squared and x squared. If I have a perfect square, the difference of squares, difference meaning it must be a minus, there must be a minus right here, in all three spots. So there could be a number right here in front of the coefficient in x squared. X squared is also a perfect square, and then the number itself is also a perfect square. And so what we do is we just write out x plus and x minus. One is positive, one is negative. That's why it's the x. Okay. Make sure you take the square root of the number right there. So that's what goes in these spots right here. We also have the sum and difference of cubes, where we talked about on Tuesday and Wednesday, the MOP. We have to have perfect cube in all three spots if there's a coefficient right here. And then we end up taking the cube root. So don't forget that you must take the cube root, okay, of whatever is in here, or what is the number. You take cube root. And what do? We maintain the same sign. So if there's a negative there, I'm going to have a negative. Opposite would be positive. And then the p is always positive. Okay. Now we're going to do some examples together. So I have right here 4x to the fourth plus 19x squared minus 5. First thing we look at, is there a GCF between 4, 19, negative 5? No. So now we're going to use the ABC method. So with the ABC method, we have that a equals 4. So we will put a equals 4, b equals 19, c equals negative 5. And we multiply a times c, so we make our t chart, multiply our a, which is 4, times our c value, which is negative 5. So 4 times negative 5, we find out is negative 20. And the b value that we're trying to solve for is that the sum is 19. So what are those two factors? Well, let's try 1. 1 times 20 We know one of them has to be negative. And which one would be negative? Well, if we need the sum to be 19, I have 1, then that one would be a negative 1 plus 20. That would be positive 19. So that gives us our b value. So now what we do is we write our first term, 4x to the 4th, and then we write negative 1 x squared, and then plus 20x squared, and then negative 5, right? And so now we look and we group the first two together. What do these two have in common? They both have in common an x squared. So we divide by x squared. We have x squared minus 1. And then we look at what these two have in common, the 20x squared minus 5, the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is 5. So we divide both of them by 5. And then we're left in parentheses 4x squared divided by 5 is 1. So that's one thing. Did you notice what I forgot? In the first one, I forgot my 4. So if you notice now, these two right here are the same. So we write that out, 4x squared minus 1. And what is left now is the x squared plus 5. Okay, now can we continue to simplify? We look at 4x squared minus 1. Can that be simplified even further? Well, difference of squares. I have a minus. Can't take the square root of 4. I can. So we can do the square root of 4 x squared, which is 2x. And then we do the square root of 1, which is just 1. So now we've broken that down into the difference of squares, 2x minus 1 and 2x plus 1. Bring down the x squared plus 5. Can I simplify that anymore? No. We just leave it out in front. Okay. So I can't simplify anymore. So this last one right here is our final solution. Oops. Right there. Okay, let's look at another problem. We have 27x cubed minus 512. When we see cube, we recognize that, hey, I have a cubic function, so let me end up taking the cube root. Okay, we use mop. Okay. So I take the cube root of 27x cubed, which is 3x. We take the cube root of 512, and the cube root of 512 is 8. Once we do that, then remember we end up writing the first one is our binomial, our trinomial, and then we write our mop. Okay, maintain the same sign, which the same sign in this case would be minus. The opposite would be plus, and then leave a positive. Okay, now let's figure out what we're going to write. We're going to do the following. we're going to write 3x in here, those 3x, and minus 8. And then, what do we do from here? We write 3x 3 times. So 3x times 3x times 3x. We also write our 8 3 times. Group them in pairs of 2. So here's my first pair. 3x times 3x, that is 9x squared. We do 8 and times 8, that is 64. And then what is left is 3x times 8, which is 24x. Okay. And there, we're able to simplify it. We're going to do one last problem. So right here, we do have a GCF. We have a GCF of x. So all of them can be divided by x. So we're going to end up putting our x right in front. Dividing. So we have 2x cubed divided by x, that's 2x squared. 5x squared divided by x is 5x. And then negative 3x divided by x is negative 3. What method do we use now? We use ABC. We make our table. Multiply A, which is 2, times the value of C, which is negative 3. Okay. Whose sum must be B, which is 5. So B is 5. If I multiply those two together, we get negative 6. So the factors that we use now, we can use 1 and 1. If 1 is positive. And I have 6. Because 1 times 6, one of them has to be negative, which is the one that's negative, negative 1. Because if I add negative 1 plus 6, that equals positive 5. So now, how do we write this? We have the following. We put our first term, remember, which is x. Okay, so we bring down the x. Remember, we bring down the x. And now we write 2x and 2x. What goes inside after the parentheses? Well, we have minus 1. And we have plus 6. And now we'll see if there's a GCF between 2 and 1. No. How about 2 and 6? Yes, there is a GCF. They're both divisible by 2. So now we write the rest, x, 2x minus 1. And then 2x divided by 2 is just x, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. Can I factor anything else? No. So this would be So if you have any questions, this is our final answer. If you have any questions, feel free to email your teacher, your Algebra 2 teacher. Take care.